And I remember to hit record.
You think someone else might be coming?
That's fine. You are tasked with every now and again just doing that. Okay?
Seconds in between.
Okay?
How many seconds?
Yeah, just every so often. Whatever. Okay.
Can't handle
So,
this.
glad y'all made it. I'm Karen, everybody, well, I guess, you may not know me.
No.
Yep, so I'm Karen, and I do the local history genealogy research here, and I'm addicted to it and do it at home for hours and hours, and I'll ignore life. So, yeah, I was asked to do a program for the Genealogical Society, and they said, we don't care, just something, talk about something. And I had helped a cousin find his place in our family tree just recently, and I figured with everybody getting tested and all the commercials out there that more and more people will be getting tested. And, non-paternity events happen all the time, bad paper trails, whatnot. So the more people getting tested, the more that this is probably going to occur. So, and I made a lot of mistakes along the way as I was helping, which hopefully you guys can avoid. Okay, so, oops, turn this on. Okay, so back in July, I got this message on Ancestry, and it was just pretty much my husband is trying to find his bio dad. This D. Mullenkamp, I recognized the name. Talked about the surname Glick and also the surname Malore. And this message was actually sent to my mother, J.M. I manage her DNA ancestry. She said he was born in Denver, Colorado in '63, and, you're a match to him, and I need all the help I can get. Please help me. So, and of course, Malore, is James' my mom. Malore is her surname. And I knew I had an aunt who married a garlic, and I wondered if it was Glick a garlic. It's how those surnames can get changed and messed up. It was my third great aunt who married the garlic, and so now I've got two names. They're definitely my names. So of course and it's a DNA match, so I'm very, very intrigued. Let's see what we can find out. So off to Ancestry I went. And going under my mom, because it would be the closest match to this person, I found Mike in her matches and did a shared match, see what names are out there. And of course, this is me and my brother, so of course we popped up. But I knew who this was. This was Lemansky, O'Flaherty, Olson I recognized. Some more, I know this is an Olson. I sort of recognized that name. I thought I knew who it was, and of course Lemansky's, and those are all my Malore connections. I know who they are, I know where they fit in my tree, and they're definitely Malores. So there's, no doubt about it, he's one of us somehow. So, this is my second great grandpa. My Aunt Clara married the Lemansky, Florence married the O'Flaherty. The Lemansky also then had Olsons, so that was the connection. And then my Lafayette sister, Elizabeth, she was a garlic, and as I went back into her to see a little more information, she did move to Colorado. So that puts her in Colorado. Interesting, I thought. So knowing that the connection between everybody was Francis, I went to look at his kids, just kind of refresh what I knew about them. And Mary, she actually moved to Colorado herself, but she had 3 children. 2 died very, very young, very young. She had a daughter, but then Mary died relatively young. The husband remarried, and the daughter and him moved back to Dodgeville, Wisconsin, like in 1900 census I found him. So kind of takes her out of Colorado. Lafayette was my guy. Samuel, I know very little about. I've only ever found him in one census when he was an infant. I've never found him again. Frankie and Francis, I think it's like the same person, it's just that I keep getting conflicting evidence on their gender. In one, it's listed as a male census, and another it's a female, and daughters, I just very conflicting. I'm leaning towards it being a female. living in Colorado with a sister as a school teacher, single, in her late 30s, early 40s, but with, no children. So that takes us to my Elizabeth. She married the garlic, and she's in Colorado. Bingo, right? Right? So I gotta learn a little bit more about Colorado because, is it Denver, is it like La Crosse to us or like Platteville to us from where she was at? And I know she died in Nevada, and I did a little search, and they're just 10 miles apart. That's definitely, in the 60s, that's definitely doable. So she was in his area, 50 years apart. Did they stay in the area? Did her descendants stay in Colorado? So I look into her son, Harry Malloy. Now I'm intrigued too, because you know how the female surnames all disappear over time? No one seems to know what great-grandma's maiden name was at all. But the fact that they used her maiden name as a middle name, that would keep it kind of fresh in the future generations kind of mind. I'm like, oh, okay, because that one who reached out knew the Malloy connection, she knew about that. So, and he was in Denver in 54, so he's still stuck around. So now I go take a look at his kids, and now look at here, I've got a Malloy Comfort. So again, that Malloy name being fresh in someone's mind. Okay, so I look at him a little closer, and yes, he died in Texas, but was he in Colorado in the 60s? And given that a generation is about 28 years, so in 1916, add 28 years, it puts us at 1944. That's kind of how I estimated his age. It's a rough estimate. It could be off by 10 years, but that would make him a young man in the 60s. Definite possibility. And for that matter, he would be in his mid to late 40s in the 60s. Another definite possibility. So they're definitely, I'm going to keep these two in the front of my mind. So now I got to go to 23andMe. I have never been to 23andMe because I didn't test there, but this Mike tested at both places. So I had to go figure out this website. Well, I know the Mollenkamp name, and that's the one that reached out to him and gave the Malloy garlic connection. I know I asked and found out that this is Mike's mom's brother, okay? So, and this person I actually know, and I thought this was so weird. I mean, what is she doing in there? But I just so used to seeing her name, like on Find a Grave when we email each other, that I just kind of, weird is what I thought. So that didn't really help me, okay? So then I went to GEDmatch, all right? If you don't know, GEDmatch is just another, you can upload any of your results from any of the big testers to GEDmatch for free. So it just puts you in another database, which is important because theoretically, if you tested at Ancestry, but everybody else in your family, granted, it's not going to happen, all tested 23andMe, you would have no matches. But in this case, whether you test at 23, whether you test at Ancestry, family tree DNA, MyHeritage, you can upload it and you can see matches from all. So I go here and I recognize my mom and my brother and I don't really, there's a Loy again, but I don't even know who that is. And Loy's kind of a common name, so I kind of ignore that a little bit. And in the meantime, I'm going back and forth. I'm going to Ancestry, 23andMe in here. So when I went back to 23andMe, I recognized the name Lavery, and I saw them here. So I went to my tree, searched for Lavery. I had some Laverys in my tree. And they came down from Lafayette and Elizabeth, who I was looking at. They had a paternal aunt who married a Lavery, okay? So then I was able to work from that line all the way down until I was able to find 3 C. Laverys who are still alive today. So I'm assuming that's them. So maybe I need to reach out to them. I'm not sure at this point. But now I'm kind of really confused. I've now really confused myself because my Lafayette is married to Eloy, Elizabeth married the Garlic, this Jane Malore married the Lavery. I mean, it's all over the place, you know? I mean, he's a Malore. I got proof of that, but, you know, where does he fit in? Whose is he, you know? Whose is he? And I can't quite figure out how I'm going to decide that. I mean, I'm at a loss at this point in time. And I've heard about this chromosome mapping, and I thought, oh, that's gotta be it. I mean, I've heard about it, it's way over my head, way over my head. I learned all I could. I learned a lot, I really did learn a lot. In this case, these are the matches to Mike. See how they all overlap in that part right there? That means these people here, all four of them, got that from the same ancestor, from one single ancestor, the same one. That's how that happens. Trouble is, what ancestor? That doesn't help me at all, you know? That doesn't help me at all. And this is from 23andMe. This is from GEDmatch, that's their chromosome browsers. And again, yeah, we share a lot and where we overlap. Yeah, that's the same ancestor, but again, that does not help me at all. So I decided that's not the answer for me. So, and no, Ancestry doesn't give you a chromosome browser. They say it's not necessary, you know? So there's a big debate on that. After doing this, and I was kind of mad at Ancestry for not having one at first, but after doing this, I realized it really doesn't really help you at all, for this anyways. But here's what I forgot, that autosomal chart. I was ignoring shared centimorgans. Does everybody know what a centimorgan is? Okay. A centimorgan is just a unit of measurement on a DNA strand, and it'll tell you how much DNA you share with another person. And the higher the shared centimorgans, the closer the relationship. Like your parents, you will share like over 3,000 centimorgans with them, okay? Full siblings, it's more like 2,000. And it just gets smaller and smaller as you go down. So, and I kind of forgot all about shared centimorgans when I was doing this. So I decided I gotta get back to the basics, and I'm gonna focus on closer matches. So, these are charts, you can find them all over the internet. This is from DNA Detectives. This is from the Shared Centimorgan Project. This is a great site, by the way. A lot of information. And as you can see, this here, all right, is how Ancestry gives you your shared centimorgans, and 23andMe gives it to you as a percentage. And like, here's a full sibling, and I can't really make that out, but 2,300, looks like, got that as I can't see, something like 3,000. Yeah, and this is like the average, but it's a range, okay? It's a range. And some of these ranges overlap. So depending on where you fall, you know, you could potentially be a third cousin or a fourth cousin, but still have the same amount of centimorgans, because you know, as a third cousin. I'll get into that a little bit. I know I explained that kind of wrong. This is how 23andMe show you the percentage. Family tree DNA gives you the numbers like that. MyHeritage, like that, and then Ancestry like that. And 279 is right around second and third cousin range. I know that. So yeah, forgot to put this one I can read. And again, like this would be half siblings, and look at half sibling shares the same as what an aunt, uncle, niece, or nephew would share. So if you're coming up with someone that's in that range, now you have to kind of figure out, are you looking at a half sibling, or is that, you know, your uncle, or is that a grandparent? It could be a grandparent. So all of these different relationships kind of overlap one another based on these percentages. And keep in mind that 10% of your third cousins, you won't have any DNA match at all. 10% of them, you just don't share any DNA. You're definitely related, you're still related, but you just don't share any centimorgans. That's just the way DNA works itself out. And just a little easier on the shared centimorgans. And again, you start with yourself, siblings. They give you that range, you know, the parent range, and you know, the aunt and uncle. So they're very helpful. So if you're going to be doing this, get one of these charts and keep looking at it. Okay? Do not forget about these. So I'm just going to focus now on second cousins, because I know that's what Mike and my mom should be. They're second cousins, because of shared centimorgans. I know this, and the paper trail. So this is what Mike shares with my mom at second cousins, and that's who my mom shares with Mike at second cousins. These three fall down into the third cousin range, but again, because of that scale, okay? Ancestry is putting them as third cousins because they're on the very low end of what a second cousin should share. So, you know, Ancestry kind of sticks them into the third cousins. And again, I know that's Lemansky, that's Lemansky, that's a Lemansky, that's Lemansky, and that's a Lemansky, and this is Lemansky. And I start thinking they're all Claras. They're all Claras. So, and I found Vickerman. I hadn't heard of that. I searched for it, figured it out, and he's a Lemansky. So they're all these Lemanskys. So now I'm pretty well certain Claire is my key. Okay, I've moved away from Elizabeth in Colorado, and now I'm fairly certain it's. Oops, I forgot I did that funny little match them all up. That Claire's is a key. So, just some things to know about shared centimorgans. I focused so much on Clara, thinking there had to be, because that family is so well documented, and it really is, with current obituaries and different things. I thought there had to be like an undocumented child somewhere. And if that's the case, I mean, anybody who would know about that are long gone. So I'm not gonna be able to figure this out. It's just impossible. And again, see, that quickly, I already forgot. See, I already forgot about looking at those shared centimorgans. And I'm just so convinced it's Clara's that I didn't even look at shared centimorgans anymore. Realizing I needed a new pool of DNA matches, I remember I recognized some of the names at 23andMe, so let's go back there because I know Clara's the key. I just know she is. So I recognize them, I have no idea who this person is. But he's coming up, that's a really high match. And that's who I want to focus on. So I got to figure out who he is. What 23andMe, I don't know if you fill this in or if it comes up with other people's trees. I don't know how it works. But it says that he is searching these surnames or has these surnames. Well, there's my Malor, okay? But I don't know that first name. I don't even know how to say it. So, yeah, Borcherding. So I went to see if that was in my tree. Because sometimes you put a name in your tree and just kind of move on. And he wasn't. I didn't have that name. So I did a quick little Google search with just the Borcherding plus Malor, and I got 9 hits. And the one that really caught my eye was the obituary, because I knew who this person was. I knew him, okay? And he is my grandpa's cousin, all right? And he passed away rather recently, so I was able to go online, find his obituary, and sure enough, he had 2 grandsons with the last name Borcherding. Both their first names start with N. I think I know who NB is now, okay? But what good did that do me? Well, for one thing, it brought me back to shared centimorgans, and it kicked me off the Clara Lemansky little track I was on, because I realized he's sharing just as much as what Clara's descendants were sharing with Mike. Okay, so it didn't have to be Clara's. I mean, it shared centimorgans. They're all second cousins. They're all second cousins, so it didn't have to be Clara's. I got stuck on Clara just because a lot of her descendants were tested. So I just kept saying their names. And that which made me think, well, it's gotta be, well, no, look at shared centimorgans, Karen. So it was good that I did that, but still didn't help me, you know. No one said they had a child in Colorado. So then Tammy, she sends me an email and she talks about this R. Allen guy, you know, and 147 centimorgans, that's about a third cousin level. But again, that's too distant now. I know I've got to stay focused on closer matches because these third cousins are not helpful to me at all. And again, forgetting about shared centimorgans even again, I'm now still stuck with this Colorado connection, okay? There's got to be more to that connection than I'm getting on. And I remember talking with some Miller Garlic cousin. I thought it was the Molenkamp or the Martini, but I couldn't remember where I was talking to them at. So I need to find that conversation. It was either through like an ancestry message or through an email or something. But their garlic or Colorado connection, they've got to give me a clue. So as I'm looking for it, I stumbled across this old message on Ancestry, okay? This woman named Pat is looking for this Roland Millard that she knew as Ron, hung out with her dad, and please contact her. Well, if you didn't know this, and at the time I didn't, if you have a free trial at Ancestry, you can send a message, you can't receive messages, okay? Only paid members can send and receive. So I did reply to her, telling her, oh, well, it's my grandpa's cousin, I don't know very much about him. Maybe you know more than I do, what do you know about him? Well, of course, she never replied because she never got that. But, so I sent her an email instead. And now here's the thing, she gave me a new name, okay? And she also gave me a Colorado connection that wasn't with the garlic. Shared centimorgans, Karen, you've got to remember them. So I go into my tree and I researched my great uncle Frank, or my mom's great uncle Frank. I'd already done research, and it's a good thing I did when I did, because we still had access to newspaper access at the time. Otherwise, I would have never found this, okay? But because I did it when we had that access, I had this in my tree. And this Roland, his mom was married previously and had 5 small children when her husband was murdered by a neighbor, okay? And they had the last name of Marcinet, okay? And then married my great uncle Frank, and they had Roland. And is this the Roland Millard that this Pat's looking for? Now we've got to find that out. My mom knows very little. I asked her about Roland, I asked my Uncle Dean, her brother. They don't remember Roland at all. They both remember, though, going to their great Uncle Frank's house in Minnesota. They probably played with one of these, these guys as kids, but, when you're 5, you don't care whose parents and how they were, But she doesn't remember Roland at all, but again, he'd be 20 years older than them. So, of course, he was off, being a young man and not hanging out with the kids. So she wouldn't give me much help there. So I emailed Tammy and I told her about Roland and his half-siblings, and his mother's maiden name is Grimm. So I asked her, do you remember seeing in any of your Mike's matches a Marcinet or a Grimm? And she's like, one of those, I do kind of remember Grimm. Let me find it. She emails me back and says she got it. You know what the name she gave me was? That R. Allen. The one I kept dismissing, saying that's not going to be helpful at all. See, I should have looked at him a little bit closer, but I did not. So R. Allen, so I have to go see more about him and look who he has in his tree. And I actually, because I was just in Roland's tree looking around, kind of refamiliarizing myself, I remembered that name, okay? I had that name in my tree, all right? So he has this in his tree, this R. Allen guy, his grandma, her great-grandmother, Elsie, and then I had this in my tree from a long time ago, all right? And that is Alma Grimm. who married my great uncle Frank and had Roland. All right? So I've got DNA evidence that Mike's a Malor for sure, right? I've got DNA evidence that he's a Grimm, and the only Malor that with a Grimm connection is my great uncle Frank, who's the son of Lafayette Malor and Sarah Ellen Loy. That's where those Loys were coming from, and I just kept ignoring him, going, well, that's weird. Was that weird? But see, I had clues all along. Now it's starting making sense. So I go into Mike's account again. I do a shared match with this R. Allen, and I'm just gonna go through everybody's trees. I need more proof, I need more names. I would have got a hold of this person to ask information because it's a private tree, but that's a last resort kind of thing. And I found this, and I don't know how she says it, this Euro PA Heather, but I hit pay dirt with her, all right? I'm so glad I went into there. Because if you look down here, oops, look what she names her tree, Marcinettes. Marcinettes, and that's just a funny enough name. It's not common like Loy, I can't dismiss that, okay? Maybe Grimm a little tiny bit, but I can't be dismissing this Marcinette with the Grimm connection to a Malor connection. It's just, I can't do it. So we definitely know that Roland is our guy. He is the missing father. But he passed away in the early 1980s, so yay, we found him. That's a lot of work for that. You know, it just sort of seems so, well, that can't be it. So I reached back out to that Pat who got me looking into Roland to begin with, and asked her a couple questions, and she told me that, and like I said, she knew him as Ron, that Ron worked with her dad sometimes, and they sold some fruit and vegetables. She remembers that Roland was married to a woman named Pat, who she says she was named after, and that Pat owned a bar called Kinsey's. She couldn't remember how it was spelled, just knew it was Kinsey's, and that was located in downtown Denver. Well, I found in a 1960 Denver city directory this Mrs. Eileen Malor, which look at, she's the owner of a Kinsey's Grill. Okay, so I got another name. She does remember that this Pat Malor was killed in a car accident, and you know, Pat could have been a middle name, Eileen could be there's 100 different reasons why she remembers her as Pat. And she also remembers that there were twins, her parents and Ron hung around, Leroy and a Roy Pierce, and that Leroy was married to a Mildred. And she remembers them quite clearly. But we still aren't sure, is my Roland her Ron, or vice versa? I mean, we don't know yet. So I'm talking to Tammy in the meantime about this, and so her and I go searching a little more to find out about this Ron guy. And we found this, we both found this at about the same time, her in Colorado, me in Wisconsin, working on our own. And both emailed each other right away with the same thing, look what I found. And if you look, this is a Roland Malor, married to this woman, this Lannon woman. But look at who the witnesses were. Mildred Pierce and Leroy Pierce. Mildred and Leroy Pierce were the twins. I think I found her Ron. I'm fairly certain it's her Ron now, that she gave me those names, and there they are on a marriage certificate.
And they were just friends.
They were of Roland, yep, and her parents. So, yeah. We'll get a little more into Roland's background a little bit. He's apparently a fun guy. So now that I got these Marcinettes, I start doing a little research on Roland's half-siblings. And I was able to track down a nephew of Roland, contacted him, told him about the situation, and just said, what do you remember of Roland? You know, your Uncle Roland. And the ones who were willing to talk back said they don't always remember much, but one does remember going and picking fruit with him. You got that fruit connection. They do remember him as the fun uncle because he was younger than their parents, so you know, he wasn't quite the adult acting uncle, you know, he was more their age kind of uncle. And he ended up sending a picture. And so I forwarded this picture to Pat, and I knew that would be the role, and the nephew pointed it out, and Pat said, yep, that's Ron, that is him. So, you know, we now know a little bit more about Mike's dad because we contacted someone who actually remembers him. And then that marriage license, so I started looking into that bride, just to see what I could find about her, okay? And it was a very short-lived marriage, very, very short-lived marriage, so I imagine probably the happiest of marriages. But I found out she was still alive. And then I was able to find her daughter and track her daughter down. I reached out to her daughter on Facebook, explained the situation, and said, they just want to know about him. I mean, we don't want anything from you. We don't, you know, if it's probably bad memories. We're sorry to bring that. But we just want to know about the guy. And you're like one of the last people left that can tell us in an adult way what he was like. And her mom agreed to do it. And so on my birthday in December, Sunday morning, we set up in 3 separate time zones, a video chat with her and her mom and Mike and Tammy in Colorado and me. And she gave us some information, and it wasn't the best of marriages. And she said she knew he had one son, and she was still in contact with that son's ex-wife. So she knew it wasn't Mike. She had no idea about Mike. And that son went by his mother's maiden name of Duckworth, which is kind of a funny enough name that you think it'd be easy to track down. But she said she was not surprised to find about other children because he was kind of a ladies' man and a real sweet talker, and that did make her chuckle a little bit thinking about that. So it was really nice that she talked to us. And then later on, Tammy reached back out to the daughter to ask other questions, because, you know, you have your questions written out, but you still don't, you think of so much stuff later after the fact. Well, what about this? What about that? And they've always been very, very generous and kind and replies back with answers that they can. So then Mike reached out to several gentlemen with the last name Duckworth and the correct first name. And to date, none of them have responded, unfortunately. And he got a new match on Ancestry with enough shared centimorgans and with the right age to be a half-sibling. So we've got another half-sibling out there. And actually I forgot to update this. The half-sibling actually reached back out to him and sent a picture, but he was adopted as an infant. Okay? So, but we found his dad. So, what did I learn through all this? Those shared CMs, do not forget them. Do not forget them. Don't forget them, don't remember them, and go jump right back in and forget them right again just because of Colorado, okay, like I did. And triangulation, that's where I went to shared matches. That is just, you're just gonna have to do that. You've never figured it out without it. And you gotta look at other people's trees, the ones that'll let you. That's where you're gonna get some more names, and you can start putting pieces together. I mean, if we hadn't found that Marcinet connection or that Grimm connection, we'd still be looking. We'd still have no idea. I'd still probably be stuck with Clarice, looking at those people again and again and again and getting nowhere. And you know, researching these siblings, people don't do it in their own, just in their own trees. They think they just do their line and their line only. And the siblings can give you so much more information on your person. You know, their obituaries, they could be in the newspaper, you know, and mention your person, but if you're not researching the siblings, you're gonna miss all that. And had I not researched Roland's siblings when I did, I would not know about that Grimm connection probably, or that Marcinet connection. So siblings are really, really important, you know, and you gotta find and read those obituaries when you can, because they give you, you know, they give you more names, and that's essentially what you're looking for, you know, the clues to more names. And then because of that, you know, we found a nephew that had a picture of Roland. So he actually has a picture of his dad that we would have never had we not gone, you know, a couple steps further. And don't get hung up on locations like I did. I mean, granted, you need to make sure the person was in the area to make it feasible, but think of how many people can travel that's never documented, you know, and if they lived there for 4 years, but it wasn't in a census time, and they didn't have a phone, or they weren't in a directory, you would never know that this person maybe lived in New York City. And so, you know, so you can't really get hung up on locations, like I did, Colorado, and Elizabeth, and Garlics. And, you know, women were able to get away with undocumented births also. You know, the fact is, there's undocumented births out there. Obviously, biology makes it easier for the man, okay, granted, but, you know, women went away and helped a sick aunt. Even if went to school and she could have been living in New York, have a baby, and then came home, and, you know, nobody would be the wiser. So, you know, it can happen with both of them. And again, I say it again because it's so, so, so important. Amount of shared CMs is very important. Keep that chart in front of you, and just remember, the more you share, the closer the relationship. And if you're sharing the same amount, you're that same, you know, you're both second cousins. It doesn't, if he had shared more centimorgans with those Garlics in Colorado, that's how I should have known that he wasn't, you know, he wasn't from that line. He would have shared much more than what he did. But I just kept ignoring that. I just, you know, I was fitting a square peg into a round hole. I was just forcing it in there, and it was going to work. It was going to work no matter what. So again, you know, DNA is not wrong, and shared centimorgans prove the relationship no matter what. So keep that in mind. And there's Mike. So. And then there's his dad, and actually just yesterday, Tammy had sent me a picture of the half sibling, and I put them all together, and yeah, there's definitely, I mean, you're not supposed to look at pictures to say if someone's related. I know that, but yeah, there's some illegally, let me just say. And then on side note, Tammy, the wife, she doesn't know who her biological father was, and her ancestry test got screwed up, or she sent it in, did all the waiting, and it couldn't be read. It was, you know, bad, so they send a new one back, and of course now the waiting's even harder. Well, on she calls him her birth certificate father, the man who raised her, had given her a couple names of possibilities who her mom had mentioned to him as possible father. Well, on Valentine's Day this year, on a Thursday, her results came back from Ancestry. So Friday morning, I'm kind of going in, you know, because now she wants my help also for her. So I go in, and I'm kind of just looking around, and in the meantime, she had found a match that was a very high half-sibling match, reached out to the person who administered that. They said, that is their brother-in-law, let me talk to him. And sure enough, less than 24 hours after getting her results, she knew who her biological father was. He's still alive. She sent him, you know, a letter saying, you know, I just want to know a little bit about you. In the meantime, the half-siblings have been keeping in contact. Unfortunately, one of the half-siblings just recently passed away before she had a chance to meet him. But yeah, I think that's got to be a record.
I was gonna say, that does not happen.
Less than 24 hours from getting her results, she has her father's name, and is it Barris? Barris. And it's just a different enough name to, you know, I love those little different enough names. So yeah, that has to be a record. So, any questions from anybody?
What was that, whatever it is, that combines, if you had a DNA test,
Oh, GED Match.
GED match?
GED match.com. And it's kind of fun to play around in that site. It's free, but there are some little fun things you can do. It's called the Tier 1 level, where you can pay, and it's $10 a month. You can just do the 1 month. And there's like one called Lazario. I know the man in the Bible that Jesus brought back. Can't think of it.
Lazarus.
Thank you. I never say his name right. I never say it right. But it's called that test and you take, there's parameters you need. And I had my dad's brother's DNA done, plus mine and my brother's, and a couple of the, I think I actually used you. I used you on there also, and you put in what the relationship is, and then they however they do it, made a virtual DNA profile for my dad. Whether, it's accurate, but it was kind of fun to do. And then I can kind of compare that, I can throw him into some of my comparisons now, which, for $10 for the fun, I thought, why not? So, it was all right. Any other questions?
Is there one of the DNA places that you recommend or don't recommend?
I've known people that have been tested on all, you've been tested at several, that you pretty much come back to the same, but Ancestry has the largest database, okay? So if nothing else, it's a good place to start, unless you want to find your Y chromosome on the male side, if you want to find your haplogroup, or the mitochondrial that you get from your mother, then Ancestry doesn't test that. You'd have to use, and the other testing companies do. So if that's what you're interested in, Ancestry's not, don't bother with Ancestry. But as far as I can see, they're all pretty much the same. You're gonna get the same results, it's just that Ancestry is just bigger, so you're gonna obviously get more matches that way, so. And they all go on sale, wait for sales, they're pretty reasonable now, so, okay?
Did Mike know, did he know his mother?
Yes, I kind of skipped over that part, and I apologize. His mother's still alive. She has basically lied to him about who his father was his whole life.
And she knew.
She knew, and she will not talk. She will not change her story. They bring it up to her now, and she's kind of suffering, I think she's suffering from dementia or something, and she gets very, very agitated, will not change her story, period. Just won't do it, will not talk about it.
And you wonder why.
Yeah, I guess everybody has their own,
Yeah.
their own reasons, but, yeah, and then he'd always suspected, I usually talk through Tammy, she said he's always kind of suspected, but then when he got the DNA results back, there's all these last names of, Malore, Lemansky, what? It's nothing like what, who I was raised with, so, yeah, that's kind of what started
His
this.
mother's probably around her 80 or so.
She was rather older when he,
Oh.
yeah, she's I think in her 90s now, if I remember correctly, so.
63
Yeah.
was around my kids'
Yeah.
age, so I just.
Yeah, I think she was, because she had some other children too that were older than him, so. All right, anything else?
That DNA guide is, where do you get that?
I'm sorry.
You had a DNA guide up there working.
Oh, the Adsumio charts all over the internet. Yeah, I can even, I'll even send you one. I'll send you, yeah, but all you gotta do, just Google search for autosomal chart or DNA relationship chart, and you'll get a whole bunch that pop up.
Have you ever used that shared project one? It's called shared and then you just type it in and then you put in the amount of centimorgans and it gives you
Yes.
the possible
Relationships, yeah. There's lots of sites like that too, that the shared CM project, if you go there, it's Brian Bettinger, I think.
That sounds right.
Brian Bettinger, I think, but his site's great, and a lot of different tools, but again, you put in your shared centimorgans and it'll come back saying, well, this is either a grandparent or an aunt or uncle or whatever the case is, so. And they're out there, you just type in shared centimorgans or just shared CMs, and you'll get it, so. Anything else? No? Well, if you have any questions,
I wrote a
Email.
book a month or so ago, about a woman who had the test done and
Mhm.
found out her father wasn't
Yeah.
her biological father, and just totally threw her for a loop. And, you know, with a whole bunch of research and whatever, she found out that her mom hadn't been able to get pregnant, and they went to a medical school where the doctoral students would donate sperm for, it was actually the
Yeah.
father, whatever.
Yeah.
And, oh my gosh, it was just so fascinating.
Well,
You know, how
that's,
how you track that down, you
Yeah.
know? And
yeah.
she
The
did.
same process, actually.
Yeah, well, essentially, yeah,
Yeah.
just, what I did is just,
And the mom, but the mom didn't know, they always, the mom, they mixed. They
yeah.
didn't
Was that you
tell-
that was, because
I wasn't.
I just had this conversation with somebody else, but they were told to make love before they get there, have this procedure done, and then go home and do it again, so that way you would never, in
Exactly.
case that worked, they would never know, you would
No.
never know for sure if it worked or didn't work.
Right.
So, yeah. Kinda crazy there. All right, bye Mike, bye Tammy, everybody say bye Mike and Tammy.
Bye, Mike.
Bye, Tammy.
All right.